Did you know that some wedding gowns, already purchased pre-COVID in anticipation of the big wedding day, never got to have their moment in the sun? This was the case for Felicia's second-hand wedding dress. Over the last 3 years, with the pandemic and the fallout of travel bans, lockdowns and social restrictions, there has been a wholesale shift and change in thousands of engaged couples' wedding plans, expectations and budgets. Felicia purchased her gown on the online platform StillWhite, and it had not even been worn yet because the original owner had planned her wedding and then it was postponed due to complications around COVID, and then they decided to elope. Recently married Felicia is a self-confessed, financially meticulous person and did a whole heap of research before she decided to click the Contact Seller button. Fortunately for you, Felicia is really generous and happy to share how she did it, and today you'll learn all about her experience, the pros and cons of buying pre-loved, including local bridal boutique The Bride Lab's perspective and advice, and the 5 smart things to do when you buy a pre-loved wedding dress. Let's get into it. Unbridely is a community of pro-wedding vendors who believe in freedom and integrity in weddings, giving you options, solutions, tips and tricks to create the experience and memories that you and your fiancé really want and deserve. Because we believe that weddings are a team sport. With how-tos, stories and interviews with recently married couples, we find out what went right and what they'd change if they could go back and do it all over again. I'm Camille, and welcome to the Unbridely podcast. Call them used, vintage, sample, pre-loved, second-hand or even new wedding gowns that are given a second opportunity after a change of plans. They're all increasing in popularity. So if you have your heart set on a particular wedding dress designer but don't have the coin to match, a pre-loved wedding gown might be a viable and brilliant option for you. And there are a few reasons why. Couples who are wanting to stretch their budgets further but still have a vision in their heads for how they want their wedding to look are, more than ever, actively investigating creative ways to achieve both their financial goals and their dream wedding aesthetic. Recently married, Felicia definitely knew what she wanted in a wedding gown, but she also wanted to spend more of her budget on other aspects of her wedding day. So I chatted with her about the research she did, her process, and the result to save you time, give you an insight into what it's like, and work out if it might be for you too. I started by asking Felicia how she first heard about StillWhite.
I found out about StillWhite on Facebook, wedding groups, sharing advice, that sort of thing. The way I went about it is once I found, my inspiration for the dress or the dress that I liked, and then went on StillWhite to find that specific dress. If not, find something very similar. I found it really flexible in that, the filtering options are really good in there. So if you know exactly what you want, you can tick those filtering options and it'll bring up all those dresses that will suit that style that you've laid out for it. So I found it really handy.
You said that you knew what kind of style you were really after. You're after the lace, you're after the long sleeves. Had you narrowed it down to a particular designer or bridal house?
No, I didn't. I wasn't set on specific designers. I know some people are, they really want to wear a dress from a particular designer and that's fine. But for me, it was more about knowing that the dress that I've got is what I really wanted, regardless of where it's from, who designed it. I mean, budget does come into it, which is why StillWhite's really great because you can find some dress options that you originally thought were unattainable and suddenly they are within your budget because, you're not paying the recommended retail price that you do in boutiques.
So can I ask, so you had this vision in mind. Had you started to look in boutiques for like retail, brand new dresses? And what led you to StillWhite?
So I started my dress shopping actually in person. And once I kind of confirmed in my head that that was actually what I wanted, that's when I then went to StillWhite and said, this is what I'm going to search for on StillWhite. But for me, it wasn't mostly about very fine details of the dress. It's kind of like I formed a scaffold in my head of, yeah, okay, I want floral lace and, I want a V neckline or something like that. And you can filter those options out. But it's really handy to go in person and just make sure, like, solidify in your head that what you visioned is actually what you want and actually what suits your body as well. So that's the way I did it. I started by going into some boutiques and trying on dresses that I thought were what I wanted. And then once I felt confident enough in that choice, translating that to StillWhite to then find an option on there.
When did you decide that you wanted to go StillWhite instead of retail, and why?
I don't know if there was a particular point in time. It was kind of something that was always in the back of my head. And I think the reason why I ended up going for it is I think something that's kind of a misconception about StillWhite is everything on there is already going to be worn. And I was very lucky in the dress that I ended up loving on StillWhite was actually never worn. So it was a situation of where someone had planned a wedding during COVID. The wedding had been cancelled and they eloped, and instead she didn't get to wear that dress. So I thought, while I was dress shopping and obviously seeing the price of some of these dresses, it does scare me. And I'm I guess, quite a financially meticulous person, I guess you could say. Finances are something that I'm quite passionate about, something I'm really considerate about. And so all my choices for my wedding were very considered choices financially, but also not compromising on what I wanted as well. $4,000, that's a lot of money to spend on a dress. There's got to be a better way to approach this. And I know that there's this platform that sell wedding dresses. How about I look on there, see if I can get a more financially viable option and still get what I want and what I envisioned myself wearing.
So tell me what happens. You found this magical dress. It hadn't been worn before. Do you just click put in cart and you're off? Like,
No.
what's the process?
So I tell you what I did. I went to these boutiques, obviously tried these dresses on, got that idea in my head that this is the sort of style I want, searched on StillWhite, and it probably took me a couple of weeks. I was on there every day refreshing new options, seeing if there was anything new coming up and, just waiting, I guess, for that moment where that dress did pop up. And the dress popped up that I loved. And I thought, oh gosh, I can really see myself wearing this. But for some people, it can be hard to, I guess, make that decision to buy something without seeing it on you. So then I thought, I am that type of person. Is there a way I can see this dress in person? Because unfortunately, this dress was interstate and wasn't going to be an easy trip to see it. Is there somewhere local that stock this particular dress that I can go and try on in person? And very luckily, there's actually only, I think, 1 or 2 boutiques across Australia that stock this particular designer. And one of them just happened to be in Adelaide, so local. And so I made an appointment and went and tried that particular dress on and, put it on and just knew that that was what I was going to buy.
What happened then?
So I went home, and then StillWhite's really good where you can contact the seller and you can have a chat. You can ask for more photos. So I contacted the seller and I basically said, look, I've tried on this dress in person. I really like it. I just want to have a bit more of a chat about it. I'd like some more close-up photos. I'd like some photos of the hem. I'd like some photos of, whatever you want to see. And she was really responsive and sent me the extra photos that I was after. And it was only after I saw, I guess, how genuine she was and the extra photos that made me more confident in the dress I was going to buy that I went, yeah, okay, it's done. I'm doing it.
That's so exciting. And at any point, Felicia, were you concerned about sizing or alterations or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I actually was, particularly because I actually knew this dress wasn't my size and it was 2 sizes bigger. So what I did actually, and I forgot to mention this, the original photos that I saw in the meantime, whilst waiting to chat to the seller, I actually sent the images to an alteration seamstress, bridal seamstress, and said, hey, I'm thinking of this dress. These are the images. It's 2 sizes too big. Is this something that we can work with? And luckily the dress that I had, it wasn't too structured on the top. So the top was the big concern, but the tulle skirt was fine. But it was the top that would need quite a bit of work to fit to my torso and my arms. And she advised me that because it wasn't too structured, it didn't have a lot of boning, that it would be a simple process to get it altered. It'd be a lot of work because every seam would have to be altered, but it wasn't a difficult process. And so then once I got the okay from the seamstress and then got the extra photos and had the extra chats with the seller, it kind of, all made sense to me at that point.
You were so cautious. You checked every single angle, didn't you?
I think that's what it takes. I mean, there are going to be risks with these things. And I know that there probably are going to be not some horror stories, but, some stories where it didn't work out. But they're more likely stories where someone hasn't covered all the bases and, have bought it, then realized, oh, I should have asked about this. Or, oh, I should have thought about that. And so I think it's really important that you do a lot of research when you indicated that you're interested in something to really make sure it's going to work.
The biggest motivating factor for you to go with the pre-loved dress, was it financial? Was it environmental?
To be honest, there is an environmental impact. I think for me, it was knowing that I can give that dress another purpose, which is a motivating factor, but also the financial aspect of it was definitely beneficial for me, because even with buying that dress on StillWhite and then paying for the alterations, as much work as it needed, by the time that cost came together, it was still less than half the price if I went to buy it from a boutique anyway. And usually what happens is when you buy a dress from a boutique, it's not made to you. It's just made to a stock standard size. And generally all dresses that you buy from a boutique need alterations anyway. It was just a really good solution for me. And no one would have known if I didn't say anything. And it doesn't make the dress less special at all. I don't think that at all.
I wanted to ask you that, Felicia. Do you believe in superstition around dresses?
No, I don't. I'm a scientist by my day job. I rely on evidence. I rely on logic. So for me, I find it hard to be a superstitious person. But yeah, I still felt like the dress was mine. Only after I got the alterations, though. That's when I felt like it was really mine.
Just one last question, Felicia. So do you have any advice for engaged people who are considering buying a pre-loved wedding dress?
Yeah, lots. So my first thing, I guess, goes back to the research. I think it's absolutely worth putting the legwork in, spending that time doing all your research. Make sure you're covering all your bases in terms of the design of the dress, the structure of the dress, whether it can be further altered. Something else to keep in mind is some dresses on StillWhite have already been altered. And if the post does indicate it's already been altered, making sure that you know exactly what those alterations are and if that's something that you could alter again if you need to. Things like probably the classic one would be, trimming hems. So if the bride was particularly on the shorter side and had a lot of the hem cut off, but then you're a taller person, it's not going to work because it's not going to be the length that you need it to be. So if there are any alterations, make sure you're across all of them and what it means for you, how it would impact on you wearing the dress. And then, you can do what I did and consult with a seamstress in the meantime and make sure that the dress that you were thinking of can be altered to what you desire and what you wish. Obviously, there are some limitations to that without seeing the dress in person, but it depends on what you want done and what the seamstress advises as well. So do your research. It really is worth it. I know it is a lot of legwork, but it's definitely going to be worth it to make sure that what you buy is going to be something that you can work with and something that you're going to love. Because the worst thing to happen would be for you to buy it and you get it and you've overseen something that could have been resolved by a simple question. And, at that point, it would be disheartening.
If for whatever reason the dress wasn't as perfect as it was for you, are there any returns?
So each seller will specify the conditions on which they're willing to accept a return. And most of those listings will specify things like the dress doesn't match the description, or there's damage to the dress that wasn't disclosed, things like that. But for things like wrong size, change of mind, that sort of thing, a lot of sellers won't accept a return. But in that case, there's nothing stopping you from sticking it back on StillWhite and, just saying, look, it didn't work out. I'm going to pop it back on and see if someone else wants it, and I'll look for something else in the meantime. So it's not the end of the world if you get something and it wasn't the way you thought it was. And don't be afraid to contact the seller and communicate. I'm fairly open with my communication, and, I'm not a shy person when it comes to big decisions like that. Yeah, definitely have as much of a chat as you can with the seller about all just different aspects of the dress, and ask for those extra photos. It really will put your mind at ease as well.
How far out were you from your wedding day when you were first looking through StillWhite? And did you have it in the back of your head, oh my goodness, I've got to find this quick? Or, where were you at there?
Okay, so I started planning my wedding and booking things and buying things like 2 years in advance. So I'm a planner. I plan everything very well in advance. And so I think I got my dress, I think it was something like 20 months in advance. Yeah. And it kind of you have to store appropriately in the meantime. So have it in a dress bag and keep it out of the sun, cool space, that sort of thing. But I got it quite early on, and then had my alterations done 8 weeks in advance of the day. I mean, it depends on the type of person you are, but I don't really believe in the stigma of buying dresses on StillWhite. Like I said, there are a few people in my wedding who knew how I purchased my dress, but no one else knew. And they wouldn't have known, there's nothing to indicate to them that I've bought it that way if I didn't say it. So I don't buy into the stigma. And like I said, it gives a dress a new purpose. And for some, it can be a really good financial option as well if they're struggling to reconcile the cost of a wedding dress.
In the end, you didn't have to make a compromise. You got exactly what you wanted.
I got exactly what I wanted, and I got exactly what the groom wanted as well. On the day, he said, this is exactly what I envisioned you wearing. And that's all you want to hear, is that this dress is you. And I didn't have to compromise on that at all. So for me, honestly, it was the best experience, and I wouldn't change it.
Thank you so much, Felicia. I really appreciate your time.
While Felicia's experience buying from StillWhite was positive and she had a great end result, it's super important to consider all your options and weigh up the different possibilities and how they might change for your personal circumstances before you make a decision. Here are some of the pros of buying a pre-loved wedding gown. Number 1 is the price. You may have the opportunity to purchase a designer gown at a greatly reduced price. This may not have even been in your ballpark with your current budget, but there are caveats to it as well, and we'll get to that in a moment. Generally, though, you can expect to pay somewhere between half to 3/4 of the retail cost. Number 2, the dress. It gets to be worn again, and it gets to create new memories. It gets to be a part of another celebration. There's something really beautiful about, for example, vintage gowns handed down from grandma to granddaughter. And if that doesn't give you the warm and fuzzies, I don't know what will. Number 3 is it's more environmentally friendly. Sustainable weddings take into account that one of the top 10 most polluting industries on the planet, according to eco-experts in the UK, is the fashion industry. And while the impact of one wedding gown and 3 new bridesmaids' dresses isn't the same as fast fashion worldwide, it all contributes, of course. Environmental responsibility in weddings, whether it's from having a smaller guest list of friends and family who maybe don't have to travel too far, serving local produce, or getting engaged with vintage or some estate jewellery, it all means that you've done your part to keep your footprints on the earth a little lighter. But I wouldn't be giving you the full story if I also didn't share some of the potential downsides of buying a second-hand wedding gown. You still haven't written your vows yet, have you? Let me help. In around 20 minutes or so, you can easily write personalised wedding vows unlike anything you've heard before that will make your fiancé feel like the most loved, understood and appreciated person on the planet. The How to Write Wedding Vows That Don't Suck instant download 17-page PDF ebook walks you through a step-by-step format for your vows, how to find the right words and phrases to describe your feelings and your fiancé, how to write that crucial first draft, and create your final wedding vows masterpiece. So if you don't know how or even where to start, if you've been Googling your little heart out, or if you've been calling them wedding vows, AEIOU, this ebook is for you. Included in there are also some bonus secrets for getting the most out of your wedding ceremony. So make sure you download your copy right now and get Write Your Wedding Vows crossed off your to-do list today. The link is in the show notes. And number one is, LUK says that opinion appears to be divided when it comes to second-hand wedding dresses. Do you want to take a guess at the percentage? Their research shows that 48% of people would be open to wearing a pre-loved wedding dress, where 52% wouldn't. But there is evidence to suggest that the numbers are increasing post-COVID and with the current economic climate. Con number two is, if it's been worn previously, you've got to get your head around the emotional aspect. So someone has probably already shared their first dance in it and gone to the toilet in it a couple of times too. So if you get very emotionally attached to things and can't let superstition and things like that go, a pre-loved dress might not be for you. And number three is the unseen costs of buying a pre-loved dress. Things like alterations, cleaning, and the postage or shipping. And sometimes these extra outlays can all add up to be roughly the same cost as purchasing a new gown from a boutique. I reached out to local wedding gown boutique, the Bride Lab's owner, Laura, about her thoughts of brides buying pre-loved gowns, and she brought up a couple of points that I hadn't even thought of. Here's Laura.
When you purchase a gown through us or through a boutique in general, it's much more than just a transaction. It's so much more than just buying a dress and taking it home. We offer a really personal one-on-one experience. We also work to build relationships with our brides and offer a really comprehensive service, which starts well before we meet you and extends to beyond the wedding day. I guess it's a bit like having an insurance policy or like a warranty. If you purchase a gown secondhand, you've got no idea what that gown has been through. You've got no idea who's done any alterations on the gown or what the quality of that job might be. Whereas purchasing a gown through a boutique, you have access to the exclusive partnerships we have with our seamstresses, who are the most experienced and the most knowledgeable of working directly with those brands. They're the best people you would want working on your gown, rather than, if you buy it online and you have to find someone on Google, you've got no real idea if they've got any experience with those type of gowns. It's like having someone you can call up if there's ever any issue, whereas if you buy a gown online, there's no one you can call upon. So we're there helping you every step of the way to make sure that you're feeling and looking your most fabulous.
So to Laura's points, the care and the support that you get through a boutique prior, during, after, you just won't get when you're buying a second-hand gown. So if that's important to you, then maybe it won't be for you. However, if you've worked through your budget, you've had a think about the positives and negatives, and you are adamant that you want to see if you can find a way to purchase a second-hand wedding gown that is just perfect for you, then let's do this. Just like Felicia's approach, the real key is all in the preparation and planning. So here are the 5 smart things to do when you buy a pre-loved wedding dress. Number 1, know what you're looking for and start with plenty of time to spare. So while a broad overview of what you're looking for is okay, the closer and more specific you can get to articulating your ideal wedding dress, the easier your search will be. This includes if you're looking for a particular designer or not, Your budget, certainly. The location of your seller, is it all right with you if your dress is currently in another country? Does that sit with your risk profile? The condition of the gown, your height, the silhouette you prefer, the design of the back, the colour family, the fabric, your usual size and your measurements. The more information you can collect now, the narrower your search will be and the quicker you'll be able to hone in on the styles you love and gravitate towards. Number 2 is get searching and be patient. This is the key time to really trust that your gown is out there and that you'll be able to get what you want. Use the filters available on the major sites to refine your search. As Felicia was saying, she was refreshing every day. You can certainly do that, but just give yourself the time and the space to let this dress come to you. Number 3 is questions. All the questions. And there's 2 parts to this. So 3A is ask all the questions of the person selling the dress. Get all the photos, video if possible. Ask if the dress is dry clean, whether it's been altered in any way. See if you can communicate with the seller via chat. You'll need to check the photos and video for defects, staining or damage, especially on the hem, around the bust line or neckline, and under the arms. And ask to see a receipt if you're in doubt of the authenticity of the gown or designer. And, if you're thinking it might be a cheap fake, find out now. If you can see the dress in person in natural light, that's an absolute plus. And the attitude and openness of the seller will also tell you a lot about the genuine nature of the sale. And the second part of questions, 3B, is you really need to be across everything that the platform that you're using, whether it's StillWhite or a different selling platform, what their returns and payment policies are. An established and reputable pre-loved wedding gown seller will offer you more protections than someone on Facebook Marketplace, for example. So with StillWhite, if your dress arrives significantly different to the seller's description, damaged, counterfeit, or doesn't arrive at all, PayPal buyer protection can protect you for the full purchase price plus shipping costs up to $20,000 US per item. That can give you really good confidence that once you've done your research and you make the decision, they'll back you with that. Also at StillWhite, if there's an issue with your dress, you have 180 days to file a dispute. But unfortunately, and this is what you have to suss out with the site that you're buying from, on StillWhite, if the dress is not your style, you change your mind, or it doesn't fit, there is no recourse for a return. You can resell it, of course, but there's no return for those change of mind examples. Whereas a site like Nearly Newlywed, they have a 5-day risk-free returns policy for any reason at all within the contiguous United States for $50. So it's really best to make sure that you know your specific marketplace terms before you start adding to cart. You also need to know when you need to pay and how the payment is handled. So they're all the questions you're needing to ask from the seller and the platform that you're buying from. And that's number 3. Number 4 is investigate the hidden costs and the viability of buying this dress. You need to start adding up these sneaky extra costs. The postage or shipping costs of large and often heavy gowns will need to be estimated. Wedding gown dry cleaning specialists will also need to give you a quote. And 9 times out of 10, your gown will need at least some minor adjustment. Between your body's measurements and the measurements of the gown, you'll now have a sense of whether or not you may need alterations and what they might be. This is when you'll need to source a reputable and experienced bridal seamstress before you purchase your gown. Wedding gown alterations are different, more complex, more time-intensive, and therefore more expensive than any other alterations you may have had experience of before. You really need someone who knows what they're doing. You'll also want to get an approximate cost and timeline for when they estimate that the alterations might be completed by. You want to allow at least a month buffer prior to your wedding day to avoid any undue stress when the original timeline is not met. Number 5, buy it. And then dry clean your purchase and store your dress carefully. Most pre-loved dresses are dry cleaned before sale, but it is always best to have it cleaned or steamed before wearing it, just to make sure it is really clean. Dry cleaning will also fluff out the fabric a bit if it's been packed away or shipped to you. Then you'll want to make sure that nothing stains, wrinkles, stretches, or discolours your dress before your wedding day. If the original garment bag is provided to you, then this is the preferred protection. Just beware that using a cheap plastic cover or bag will trap moisture in there, which encourages mould, mildew, and discoloration, or it may emit fumes. Keep your dress in a dark, out of direct sunlight, and cool space. If it's possible to lie your dress completely flat, that's preferable, and it avoids any stretching, particularly of heavy gowns, of the fabric or seams, and it will also avoid creasing or wrinkles. If you need to hang it, use the loops rather than the sleeves or straps, and don't store your dress in your garage or attic. The constant changing temperatures and inconsistent humidity can ruin the fabric and also cause discoloration. Instead, make sure to store it in a dry, dark, and cool room with low humidity. And then you'll have nothing left to do but count down the days until you can take your dress out for a spin. If you've purchased your wedding dress secondhand, I'd love to know how it went for you. You can DM me at Unbridely on Instagram or send me a 90-second audio message on SpeakPipe. The link is in the show notes. Catch you next week. That about wraps it up for this episode of the Unbridely podcast. For the links and resources we mentioned, please head to the show notes. And if you love the show, please review and subscribe on the podcast platform you're on now so you don't miss out on a single episode. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, weddings are a team sport. Catch you soon.